Hello, fans, kids, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Strength Students podcast. I'm your co-host, Steve Carty.
And I'm the other guy, Nick Scopoletti.
And today we are talking about some of the most useful tools you could use in strength and conditioning.
5 tools that you should incorporate in your training.
The 5 strength training implements.
Yes.
Right? So whether, this is kind of general stuff that's at most training facilities, right? This is stuff.
Yeah, especially nowadays.
Yeah, nowadays stuff you're going to pretty much find anywhere, right? And so these are our top instruments, I guess you could say, for strength. All right, we're going to
musical instruments for strength.
Musical instruments. Number 1, saxophone. We're going reed instruments first. So, number 1, barbells. The barbell. Never heard of it. So can you take me through that?
It's a piece of shit.
What is a barbell?
Like at its most basic forms. I just
Yeah.
want to barbell is a very long bar. Usually the standard bars are 45 pounds, Olympic bars, they're so called. Thinner in the middle, you stack the weights on the end. I feel like really dumb explaining this, but whatever. It's so
Well, there's different types. It's like,
yeah. Well, now forget about it. We could go into that for.
There are different bars that are more tailored for, or that are better suited for powerlifting, and then there's a bar that's better suited for Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah. So basically with barbells, why use a barbell? So the end goal usually, if someone's new to strength training, start them off with basic movements like, say, a goblet squat. There's always a series of progressions and regressions, right? Like, no one needs to work with a barbell, but if you want to get there, there's a way to get there. There's progressions and regressions. Barbell is usually like you have done enough. You've done enough work to get to the barbell. Like, that's not where, like, you can start there, and I'm not saying you can't, but there's a fair amount of work that goes into before you're loading up a barbell. So some things about a barbell that are good and could be bad, I guess, in some situations, but you can load it up. It is a bar. It's a stable surface. So you'll be able to do more weight than you usually can, like within a single leg deadlift with a kettlebell or a dumbbell or even a bilateral deadlift. You will be able to load it up. It's a stable. You could use it stable as can be. It could be versatile. It could be used for a million things. And like Steve said, there's so many bars out there. There's deadlift bar. There's a Duffalo bar. There's safety squat bar, and all different variations. Mm-hmm. Mastodon bar, they use it powerlifting meets, which is like super thick because some guys are squatting insane weight, so it doesn't bend. But the barbell, I think it's beautiful because it's so simple. Just like, I have no jokes, my brain's shot, but it's so simple, can be so versatile. There's programs just like strictly built off it. If you could like think of like a 5x5 or a strong lifts program, I believe that's what it's called. It's bench press over. You could bench press, overhead press, deadlift, squat, barbell row, clean and jerk, and snatch. You could do all of the main barbell like all the main movements are on a barbell. And you know what? If say you only have a barbell, that's a pretty solid tool. You can use it for, like I just said, you could use it for all those things. Like you'll cover most lifts. Like you'll cover most lifts. You can do them heavy. You could push them, and it's just a simple, awesome thing.
Well, and I think you think barbell, you think bilateral, meaning both hands or both feet. Right. You can't do any unilateral, which you could. You know, lower body, obviously, definitely. That's, you know, that's a little more obvious. You could do single leg work with barbells as well as double leg work. But as far as upper body, one would think, oh, you know, it's only bilateral with barbell. Not true. Landmine stuff, landmine presses, landmine rows. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You could hit unilateral with barbell, which is good, which is cool.
T-bar rows.
Oh yeah.
I remember in quick side note, back in the day, story time. I'm gonna tell a story. Shocking.
Get it.
Back in the day, when I first started lifting the YMCA, we used to jam the barbell into like the corner of the rack, and your boy would like step on it, and like you would just be doing T-bar rows, take the attachment, and like and just rip it. Yeah, you could literally. I didn't even think about. I forgot about the landmine. Which landmine's good because you don't go directly overhead. So for those people that can't get their arm over their head, so that's a great option.
Yeah.
And again, it's just a barbell. Like there's so much versatility with just that one thing. Anything else you'd like to add about the barbell, Steven?
Yeah, I mean the thing with barbells, although we just said yes, you could do single arm, single leg work with barbells. You also don't want to get too involved with barbells, right? You don't want to stay too rigid, right? You want to include some other tools, things that we're going to actually talk about today as well.
Yeah.
You do want to make sure you include all this other stuff. You know, a lot of times you could look at a program and it's just swamped with barbell work, right? Like bench press, squat, RDL, barbell this, barbell that, and you know, you look to the end of the program and everything you've used so far is a barbell. And we've mentioned on previous shows before as far as like imbalances and working one side of the body versus the other. Your body can hide those imbalances when you're using two legs or two arms, right? On a bench press, on a squat. You could hide those imbalances, you know? Your hips shifting that way, that's going to be able to be hidden, or, you know, using a barbell, that's going to be hidden using a barbell, right? It's not going to be so apparent why that is.
Yeah. Versus
if you were to do like a split squat or, you know, some kettlebell work with an overhead press or some dumbbell work with horizontal pressing. You know, that's when you really start to challenge your left side versus your right side, because although they do work, you know, in synergy, they are separate parts of your body. And like, you know, 99.999% of people, there are imbalances. Your left side is going to be weaker than your right, or your right side is going to be weaker than your left. Yeah. So barbell, great tool. You're going to get strong as shit, right? That's it. Barbell, right? Everything is barbell. However, you don't want to get too consumed with barbells.
Yeah,
also,
one quick story with like the whole barbell and kettlebell, like versus using other tools. So yeah, you can do them unilaterally, but like, for example, I was so anti like unilateral movements in college. I was strictly powerlifting. So I remember like when Mike Boyle came out, I have his certification now, by the way. You can tell I've grown, but like he only unilateral work. That's all. Like you're better on one leg than you are on two. You need to work on those imbalances. And I was like, all right, yeah, let me try this. And I had some good numbers. I was very strong. And I remember like trying to do single leg deadlifts with a 35-pound kettlebell and like split squats, holding them in a goblet position, and was shaking like a leaf. And I was like, this is fucked up. Like, why? That's so bad. Like, why could I deadlift high 400s and me trying to single leg deadlift a 35-pound kettlebell is making like me like this is, like you said, you know, there's some
crazy
holes,
though, right?
some holes in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy. That's the biggest thing I would say too, is people who go from both feet to 1 foot, you know. The other thing too is overhead pressing, right?
Oh yeah.
It's very common to see that, like people who can overhead press a bus, you know, like barbell work, overhead press a bus, and then you put like one dumbbell in their left arm and it's like complete shift to the right, and you know the scap, your scap is winging, you know, all that. So, you know, yes, for building ultimate total strength, barbell is probably the best, but don't get too consumed with it. Also, a little fun fact: back when weight training like first started, back in, you know, Greece, when it was just you know, to show off feats of strength, it started with stones. So stones were kind of like the first, obviously. Dumbbells came before barbells. Barbells didn't come until after dumbbells.
What?
Yeah. According to Wikipedia. Fun fact there that dumbbells actually came before barbells.
We got to check our sources. We'll talk to our team. We'll figure it out.
No, it's pretty
All
pretty
right.
certain about this one.
It's out. It's on Fox News. All right. Next up.
Next one.
Sleds.
Slurds.
Oh, boy. Slurds. So, why sleds? Why slurds? Why sleds? What the hell does a sled have to do with anything? Well, number one reason why I like the sled, great conditioning tool, of course, but there's no, you may think there might, but there's no eccentric portion of it at all. It is all concentric. So you cannot get sore from pushing a sled. Just can't happen.
Well, you can't get sore, or your likelihood goes down. Like
your likelihood goes down unless you're like, I'm sure you could get sore if you really wreck it, right? But like, so example, say you squatted a day or two before, and you're like, I'm gonna go. I can't push the sled, man. I don't want to get any more sore. It's like, no, a sled is actually used as a tool for recovery. You know, push it, get some blood in your legs, and there's no eccentric damage. It's not like you trying to. Steve's watching porn over here. God damn. All right. There's no lost my fucking train of thought now.
You're talking about the concentric versus eccentric.
Yeah, there's no, so you won't your likelihood of being sore goes down. Like you'll just get blood in your legs. That's one of I think the biggest ones for the sleds. Like I said, it could be used for recovery, which is awesome. So it's always something you could do in days between lifting. Get ready, go drag a sled. As well, it's used in, like Westside will say this a lot. They use it for general physical preparedness, GPP, whatever that's, basically. And I remember I've heard other guys say this as well, like doing your work to go under a barbell. So it's eccentric, no eccentric load. You get to move weight around, and you could do it for a sustained amount of time. So to get your nervous system ready, to get your lungs ready, everything to lift.
Yeah.
When they first get guys at Westside, and I say guys, I mean like younger kids. Like I remember Mike Fahey told us that story where he just like they handed him a med ball and we're like, all right, go ahead, just walk for 100 yards. And he's like, what? And he's 12 years old. They're not going to load him up on a box squat.
Yeah.
Need him to build his resiliency, so that's what he did, carries and sled stuff. One of the other things with sleds that was brought to my attention, I never thought of it this way at all. A sled is a single leg movement.
Yeah. Yep.
I never in my life ever thought about that.
Well, that was at the summit this year. I think that's their who spoke about that, right? Is that where you?
Now where I heard it, I don't remember hearing it there,
okay.
but I've heard it like our previous guest, Rage Christie, brought that up.
Former guest, future guest,
never again.
Hashtag never again guest.
So it's, and my boss brought this to my attention. So a lot of people, especially in general population where I work with and Steve works with, single leg work is tough for them, right? Bilateral work is tough for some of them, and movement in general is an issue. So how do we load single leg with A, no damaging eccentric, and B, without like loading them up in an unbalanced position where they might fall or hurt themselves, right?
Right.
Think about this. You're on a sled. Let's use the prowler. I think that's pretty well known, right? Hands on the two handles. As you're pushing or like as you're walking or whatever you're doing with the sled or sprinting, you are on one leg at one time or another. Your upper body is braced, and a client is able to drive their knee up further than they probably would. They would create a little bit more knee flexion, right? Creating good hip separation, teaching them single leg stuff, right? If that's a way to get them to do single leg stuff, I mean, that's gold right there, and they're not going to get sore. Obviously, there's other progressions to get someone to do single leg stuff, like squatting, using a split squatting, using a TRX and all that, but we're talking about sleds here. So I love that part of the sled. I will say I probably use it with every single one of my clients. At one time or another, we're pushing the prowler. And, that's how it helps lower body, but also upper body. You could attach a TRX to it. You could do rope drags with it, right?
That's what I was just going to say. So the other benefits using a sled is it could be pulled, pushed in multiple directions, right? It could be pulled sideways, it could be pushed forward, it could be pulled backwards. So it's a multi-directional movement. I'm working in some different planes, which is super beneficial to training. Kind of like what we were talking about with the barbell. You don't want to get caught in just one plane or in one movement, right? Especially if you're an athlete whose sport is just in that plane, okay, maybe that's a different conversation. But for the general strength athlete or general strength population, you don't want it's not ideal to get stuck in one plane. Plane meaning, forward and back, right? Moving forward and back. You want to incorporate side to side and rotational movements and things like that. So the sled is versatile in that sense.
Yeah. You could do lateral drags with it. If you hook a TRX up to it, it has things for you to, like all sorts of things you could do with the sled. I just think it's an amazing tool.
I believe sleds are, like historically kind of like a strongman thing.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Even like a football thing,
Oh, yeah, true.
You were a quarterback. You wouldn't understand.
No, wouldn't get that. I don't know what we're talking about.
Are you talking about 5-step drops?
But the biggest thing I think we talked about with sleds is the eccentric loading, right?
Yeah.
So to kind of backtrack to that a little, to explain to everyone that a little bit better, basically three parts of, and we've talked about this before on the show, 3 parts of, any lift or exercise is the eccentric part, which is the lowering of the weight, right? So like in a bench press, it's the part where you're lowering it to the chest, or in a squat where you're lowering it to the floor. The isometric part where you're holding it, right? So at the bottom of the squat, that's the isometric part of the lift. Or like the deadlift, that's like the bottom of the deadlift or whatever, right? That's the isometric part. And then the concentric is, the push, or like, in a bench press, you're pushing off your chest. Push, that's the concentric part. So what we mean by the sled having not as much eccentric, the significance of the sled not having as much of an eccentric portion of that lift, you're just not fucking up your body. Right. You're not, that wear and tear is not the same on your body. So the eccentric is known to be of those 3, the eccentric is known to be the most damaging to your body. So you're taking that part out. Right. It's all concentric. So that's definitely important.
You can also build a little muscle pushing a prowler, believe it or not. I mean, it's all just concentric loading versus eccentric loading versus all. I mean, you could build a little bit of muscle if you do enough volume with it. I know guys at Cal Strength, they talk about that. They do a lot of just concentric loading with the sled, and they said it helps a ton.
Word. All right, let's. We're gonna take a quick break, then we'll come back and we'll go over what we do 2 already, right?
2.
All right, we'll come back and we'll do 3 when we get back from our break, and we will see you in a couple minutes. Don't go anywhere. Want more of the Strength Students podcast? Go check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Also, make sure you leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and on Stitcher. Stitcher, I just met her. Welcome back, everybody. Strength Students podcast. We were talking about strength tools, the tools to success. They give you the tools to be your own boss. Our 5 strength implements.
We already did 2
for strength training. Already did 2. Talked about the
sleds and
coveted barbell. Talked about sleds. Next, number 3, dumbbells.
Our nickname in high school.
What's the deal with dumbbells?
Well, we have some history on it. Yeah. We already went over that, but so dumbbells could be used a variety of ways. You're not fixed on a bar, so you could do a bunch of different things with them. Your grip could be neutral. It could be underhand. It could be underhand and barbell, but like you could just do all sorts of.
Keep going.
You could do all sorts of different things with a dumbbell. It's good for people with beat up shoulders. We have a special guest in the house. It's good for people with beat up shoulders. If you can't,
Neighbors.
we're live from Steve's lover house. Jesus Christ!
Well, I live here too.
Right, he's moving in. Moving in. All right, that's separate. We'll talk about that later. So yeah, for guys that have shoulder issues or anything like that, it's just great to use dumbbells, a different variation. CrossFit's starting to use them now because they're starting to come around. They use it for snatches though.
Yeah, dumbbells just got introduced to the Open this year, which was huge.
Yeah, why was that such like?
And it sucked. And it was shitty. It was like, yeah, dumbbells. And then after the Open, it was like, fuck.
Dumbbells can also be used kind of in place of kettlebells in certain moves. You could hold a dumbbell by the head of it, and you could do swings with it. It's definitely more versatile for people that cannot Olympic lift, again, on a fixed bar. You can do a dumbbell snatch. You could do a dumbbell in each hand, clean and press. If, wrist mobility is not there, you don't have time to learn the techniques. It's a great tool. I know a couple guys I remember Dwight Freeney loved doing dumbbell, like really heavy, quick dumbbell clean and presses because his arms and shoulders are jacked up from playing professional football. So
yeah,
he's like, I don't want to use a barbell. Like he doesn't have the mobility, he doesn't have the time to work on it. It's about an effect for him, and at his level, I mean, how much better could he really get? You know? So
well, and with kind of the dawn of CrossFit, barbells have been used on the metabolic side of things. People like debate that, but dumbbells are actually a tool that, it's pretty good for not only the strength side of things, but the metabolic side of things. Like you can do metabolic work, like conditioning, quote unquote, type work with dumbbells. And it is beneficial, obviously depending on how much weight you use, but,
right.
And just like we said before, just being able to kind of go from more of the bilateral strength training to unilateral strength training, right? Working on imbalances, man. If your left side is weaker than your right side, it's going to be tough to work on. It's going to be tough to fix that or work on that with a barbell, right? Dumbbells, that's your jam, That's where that's going to happen.
You could be pressing bilaterally, but you'll notice differences in like arms and shoulders, and you're like, oh wow, my left is really lagging. Like you just like weird things come up when you start using dumbbells.
Yeah, and also with dumbbells too. Barbells, you can do obviously, low intensity, high rep stuff, but a little more beneficial when it comes to dumbbells. If we're talking specifically like the bench press, right? A lot of the habit that a lot of people get into, or the string that a lot of people get into and don't get out of, is doing like, just a lot of heavy barbell bench pressing.
Yeah.
Right. Great.
Been there.
Great, but, you're going to lack some development there, specifically in your chest, right? I think it's called like bencher's chest or bencher's pecs or whatever.
You get rolled shoulder.
Rolled shoulder,
pec
bencher's
minor
pecs.
gets pinched,
I mean, it's kind of like your outer pecs are, pretty developed, and then your inner pecs kind of look like pudding. And, if you incorporate some more like dumbbell stuff, doing more like dumbbell work, you're going to see a lot of more like musculature, a lot of more development in some of those muscles that are missed with barbells. Cause that's kind of how it works, man. Like once both your hands are on the bar, everything changes, different muscles are getting activated, different things are being used, as well as different things are being unused, if that makes sense,
Right.
Versus, put the dumbbell in your hand. Now your biceps, triceps, shoulders, pec, everything is kind of like, oh, this is different. We all need to work in unison right now. We all need to, your muscles are just like, we all need to work together, man.
They're like, they get together like, we are the
world. They're like holding hands and like singing and shit.
The children.
And that sounds stupid, but that's actually going to be probably a pretty good visualization for people when it comes to like barbell versus dumbbell. So definitely keep that in mind. Little history on dumbbells,
dude, Steve's
according to our
wild.
sources at Wikipedia.
Getting wild with these facts today.
Yeah, like we said before, dumbbells came before barbells, and they were used, in ancient Greece. It was actually used in the long jump, which is I don't know how that was, but it was used in the long jump in India. And there was also something called the Indian Club, which was the Indian Club, which I think is like being brought back now and like on it, and they have all the clubs. That shit ain't new.
No, but it's should add that in. I took that one.
We just
day.
did add it in.
I know, but it's a great tool. I've used that, not to get off track, but I took a 1-day kind of seminar on it, just all day of Indian clubs. Man, interesting, really cool.
Yeah, and it was they were used back in the day by a lot of like wrestlers in India.
And they were used like that, and they were martial, like they were used to fight, like straight up beat up people. They were just,
Yeah, and I believe that's what it was used to train as well, just like training for battle and stuff like that. So, little history on the dumbbell there. That's kind of the origin of the dumbbell and some of the earlier forms.
Speaking of history, my favorite implement was about to come up.
Let's get it.
Kettlebells, not kettle corn, but kettlebells. We have a mouse that loves kettle corn here. She just made a weird noise. I actually said that because I knew she would hear me. So stupid. So kettlebells. Now, talk about history. This thing has been around for a long ass time. Started in Russia, Steve.
Yep.
Check with our people at Wikipedia.
We got it. We're on it. We got it. Yep, you were right. You nailed it. Russia. Started in Russia.
So, kettlebells. What is a kettlebell? Or people say kettlebells, and I need to say right now, it needs to stop. It is a kettlebell, okay? It's madness.
And in Russia, it is known as the gira? The
Gira, yes.
Which in Persian translate to heavy.
Dude, we are killing it today with
destroying
these facts,
the information.
Man. God damn. Anyway, so it's an odd-shaped thing, right? So it's a thick, round handle.
Oh, yes. I got a great fun fact about kettlebells coming up. Yes.
I can't wait.
Kettlebells are fun.
Thick, round handle with a ball on the end, right, on the bottom of it. Okay? The odd shape of the kettlebell, the versatility with this thing, and the amount of stability work and strength work you can do. There's whole certifications on this kettlebell. And I've talked about Strong First in the past. So SFG is Strong First Gira, right? That's learning the kettlebell. If you're SFG certified, you have taken that course and you know all the kettlebells. So
Gira means heavy. Just reviewing real quick.
Oh, God. So one of the best things I think you could do, right, with a kettlebell. I mean, obviously there's swings and all that cool stuff, right?
Which is what it's was as far as strength training was meant to do.
Cleans,
ballistic movement.
Right. Move, the freedom of swinging it between your legs, and then you could throw it overhead. Kettlebell snatches. There's kettlebell clean and press. Kettlebell just straight up cleans. If you are not doing some form of kettlebell overhead pressing, you are missing, in my opinion, a huge. You're missing. If you have some sort of shoulder issue, and I feel like everyone does, if you're not at least warming up with these things, you're missing out on a huge benefit.
But that's literally the shape is, at this point especially, it's designed to do fast shit. It's designed to be swung, right? It's designed for the ballistic movements, for endurance. That's like kind of the origin of what it's kind of designed for.
Back up. So one of the things about kettlebell, and they're like, why are you so avid about the kettlebell pressing, is that the way the kettlebell sits, right, in your hand and on your forearm, right, it forces your shoulder back into the socket when you press. It is forcing it into the right position as you're moving through a range of motion. Also, you're not fixed. You could come right from a racked position, so you can see me on camera, right from like here, like you're throwing a punch, and press all the way up. A lot of freedom and movement there. I love it. Overhead carries as well. Like your shoulder stable position, it's forcing you in the right position. Meanwhile, you're walking, you're on one leg or another, so you have to find some sort of stability, right? It is one of the better things you could do. Now, also with the kettlebell, bottoms up. So you could take that handle. So it's picture the ball of the kettlebell. You could put the bottom of the ball facing the ceiling. Now you're holding the handle of the kettlebell, and you're keeping it upright. Talk about grip and rotator cuff work. That's big. A lot of, I know Olympic lifters do like a bottoms-up press with a rotation and things like that. A lot of baseball guys, too, to keep their shoulders healthy, because that's the way the scapula
Stability
moves.
shit.
Right. Stability shit. Like the rotator cuff stability you get, I mean, back up a little. Unreal. So,
it's crazy, though, too. This thing wasn't even invented. Well, fun fact, let's go back. What was this thing invented for? In the 18th century, kettlebells were used to weigh crops. That's what they were used for.
What do you mean?
They're used to weigh crops. Can't really expand much on that. All I know is that was just their original intention. In Russia, it was just a type of metal weight that was used to weigh crops. I guess I'm assuming on some sort of scale,
So it was on one side.
Yeah, you put the crops on one side. I'm assuming, right? That was the 18th century.
We're in Russian farmers. Sorry.
And then in the 19th century, it kind of transitioned into strength training, and it was used by strongmen in the circus.
Like Eugene Sandow.
Was he in the circus?
He did a lot of that weird shit, man. Eugene Sandow was one of the first strong men. He definitely has used kettlebells. And the guy who brought the kettlebell to the U.S., Pavel, if you look at his physique and the way he's built, he's almost exclusively kettlebells. And just the awkward shape of them and doing the ballistic dynamic movements with heavy weights that you can't pull it off really with a dumbbell. You can't pull it off with a barbell, okay? Just build immense strength. When we saw Stuart McGill talk at Perform Better, now he's tested the best athletes, as of now, ever in the history of the world. Some of the best powerlifters, some of the best fighters. He has had them in his lab, okay? So he said the strongest core contraction of any athlete he had was Pavel, the guy who brought the kettlebell. He trained special forces in Russia, and they used a lot of that. Kettlebells tend to have, if anyone reads Dan John or Pavel, they tend to have like a what the hell effect. Like if you do a lot of swings, there are so many testimonials and proven studies and programs out there. If you take time perfecting the kettlebell swing, which is kind of like it's a ballistic hip hinge, an explosive hip hinge, okay, with an overspeeded eccentric. We talked about eccentric before, right? This is damaging to the muscle, but that overspeed eccentric builds some serious strength and some power.
Oh yeah.
You tend to have what's called the what the hell effect. There's guys that will do kettlebell swings for a couple weeks, and then their pull-ups go up. They do 3 more pull-ups than they ever have in their life, or their deadlift goes up 50 pounds in a month.
Word.
Doing the overspeeded eccentrics. It's just a great tool. I'm very biased. This is like I'm talking about my own kid here. But
And just fact checking here, going back to the history of kettlebells. We were right. Yeah, it was that they were used to weigh crops, but yes, it was on a scale. So they were counterweights. So you'd have, on a scale, big old scale, the crop hanging on one end of the scale and the kettlebell hanging on the other side, and you'd be a counterweight to see how much the crops weighed. Boom.
I love when you talk all smart.
History. All right, last one. We got one more.
Oh, I'm going.
Bands and chains.
Bands and chains, a.k.a.
Bands that make a dance. Bands that make a dance. 2 chains.
Okay. Accommodating resistance. That's what most of these things are used for, right? Bands are used for stretching and and mobility and all that stuff. But we're talking about lifting, right? We're talking about actually working out. So those have been, I think, Westside Barbell, let's be honest, they made that famous, right?
Yeah, Louis Simmons, I think, gets the, I guess the Russians do. Because he got everything from Russia, right?
Right, but the bands, I don't know if that's Russian, dude. Now, because there's
chains Russian, though?
I don't know. There is a podcast I heard with Dave Tate, and he was talking about the first time Louis took him to go see this dude, Lenny Dykstra, I believe, or something like that, like a basketball coach with these bands, right? He was all about these friggin' bands, and he was so confused. And Louis goes, he sees this guy rolling around on the floor, doing leg stretches with bands, and then Dave Tate's with him, and he's like, "All right, man, like, why are we here? Like, we're trying to squat day, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, grab all those bands." And he's like, "Why?" And he's like, "We're gonna hook him up to the barbell." He's like,
"That's amazing.
What do you mean?" Like, listening to Dave tell the story, he was like, you could tell he was literally he was baffled and just like confused. He's like, "I got all these bands in my lap. We're driving back to the gym," and I'm like, "What the hell is about to happen?" So the whole point of using bands and chains is what's called accommodating resistance, right? So you hook them up to the barbell. As you go down in your least advantageous position, right, the weight decreases. So the tension on the band decreases, or the chain hanging off the side of the barbell, the weight decreases, right? So you're in the bottom of the squat, bottom of your bench press, and it's lighter. And then on the way up, when it should be easier, the weight gets heavier and heavier.
Yeah, when you have the most momentum and most basically what's like the word? Mechanical advantage, I guess you could say. The most advantage in pressing the weight, it makes it harder.
It's overloaded. So like you say unrack a bench press, right? Say you got 300 pounds on there, right? You could put like 150 or something of chain, 150 pounds extra of chain at the top and 150 pounds of band tension or whatever you want. So you have 450 in your hands.
Yeah, that's
even
crazy.
though there's only 300 on the bar. Now, as you go down, it gets less and less and less and less. Maybe depending on how this. And I'm not an expert on this. I'm not like a Mark Bell that could probably rattle off and knows all that stuff because he lived it. But you bring it down to your chest, and now it's at 315. Okay, or it's at that 300 on the bar. Maybe it's all the tensions off. Then you start to go up now. Now it's getting up to 450.
Right.
So it's just getting used to having heavier weights in your hands. They're used for everything. Used for strength work, for speed work, whatever it is. I think they're, there's been arguments about like, you don't need all these fancy like bands and chains and like all this stuff. Just lift. And it's like, yeah, but also you don't want to get bored as shit. Like try them. I'm not saying day one, but like
no, this is advanced stuff. Yeah, this is advanced stuff.
I would say, yeah, they're like, oh, you could use them day one. Like I've heard people say like, oh, it doesn't really matter, but you got to have some time underneath doing these lifts for a while and have some.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just it's variance. If you're at this point where your bench is stuck in the mud or your squat is stuck in the mud, maybe it's time to incorporate these different types of resistance. It's just variation. It's different types of resistance. Or I think the most popular, most common thing, conjugate style, Louis Simmons, West Side. Build up, if you say you start a strength training program and you eventually get to that point where it's like, hey, I'm not getting stronger. Do a month with them on. Do a month with them off. Do a month with chains. Do a month off. Do a month with bands. Like, just throw them in when you start to get stuck in the mud. But this is a little more towards, like, the advanced side of things.
Yeah.
So if you don't have much experience or if you're kind of new with strength training and you're just starting to squat, bench, deadlift, maybe stay away from them until you start to get a little more advanced.
Yeah, and have someone that knows what the hell they're doing set up bands and chains.
True. All right, we got to wrap it up right there. Anything else you want to add? Bands, chains?
Nah.
All right, man. So that's it. Those are our 5 strength training implements that you guys should be using. Hope you guys found that useful. Some history lessons there as well. Thanks to the good folks at Wikipedia and the internet.
Thanks, Al Gore.
Appreciate the downloads, guys. We love our viewers, man.
Yeah.
Keep on downloading and viewing.
We're almost at 50. Well, this might be 50.
No, Coach Layden will be 50.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little preview.
Oh.
Check out Instagram, Facebook, Strength Students Podcast, and don't forget to give us a 5-star review on iTunes or Stitcher.
Nothing less than 4.
4.5. Check us out on YouTube. Go to subscribe to our page. Everything is just Strength Students Podcast. I mean, it's at this fucking point where just go to these things and type in Strength Students Podcast, and we'll show up.
Strength studs.
Strength studs, baby. We're all studs. All right, guys. Peace. Thank you for listening.